Okay, guys, it is chapter 7 Odd Jobs. Jazz Harper, Space Explorer, chapter 7. We've just left Jazz in chapter 6 in a lot of trouble. She got in a lot of trouble because she broke that ceiling lamp after kicking the ball into it, okay? And it broke and shattered. And the heating lamp is very important on the Marineris colony because it keeps all the food. It's the lamps they use to grow the vegetables and some of the food, and they can't just make another one. Okay, they can't just make another one because they're on Mars. They have to ship that stuff from Earth, and that costs a lot of money. So Jazz got in a lot of trouble for doing that. Now let's see what happens in chapter 7. Do things start to get a bit better for Jazz? Okay, email. Ellen Sweeney from Ellen Sweeney. Subject: Trouble in Paradise. Dearest Jazz, oh dear, I hear there's been some trouble up at the colony and that you were caught in the middle of it. I'm sure that you're in the doghouse now, but, and don't tell your mum this, I know exactly how you feel. It takes me back to my very first expedition in 2021. I was young and still studying for my first university degree, in fact, and I had the opportunity to visit Egypt. On the first night, the team heard of a group of burrowing sand cats. Naturally, they decided to set off immediately to make observations because, at that time, the species was considered threatened by the expansion of human settlements. Well, I grabbed my hat and was tying my bootlaces when the leader of the expedition, a man named Dr. Fitzpatrick, stopped me. He told me that I was to wait at the camp while the grown-ups got on with their jobs. Of course, I protested. I was 19, and I hadn't come all that way just to wait at the camp. However, Dr. Fitzpatrick insisted that, as the most junior member of the team, that was my role. They'd report their findings when they were back. I watched the party tramp away over the sand dunes, and then I sprang into action. I zipped up the tents and packed away our dinner to stop the scorpions finding it, and I was away, over the dunes, as fast as my legs could carry me. Before I knew it, the sand cat's burrows were in sight. I lay in the dunes with my notebook as the sand cats crept out for their dusk hunt. Sand cats are similar in size to domestic cats, with sand-coloured fur, brown stripes, and tufty ears. I observed these sand cats going about their business. I noticed they were not like other sand cats I had seen. They had paler stripes and redder fur, and their ears were slightly larger. I took photos and made detailed notes, and then hurried back to camp, hoping to return before the rest of the group. I knew as soon as I crested the last dune that I was in trouble. Most of the food supply was hanging open, and their mouths crawling with insects who had arrived for a tasty meal. I charged down the dune and snatched up the food bag, but it was too late. Half the contents had been nibbled by hungry beetles. When the rest of the party returned, I was in such enormous trouble for abandoning my post, and I was immediately sent away to fetch replacement supplies, so there was no chance of joining in the rest of their expedition. It just goes to show that even the smallest job, like looking after the food, can be absolutely crucial to the success of the mission. Keep working hard and keep believing in yourself, my duck. All my love, Gran. And there's a picture of a very young Gran with pink hair on the sand dunes. Sol 104, Mars Year 57. Dear Diary, Mum came home with some super duper, amazing, exciting news. She's going on a mission to find aliens, real life Martians from Mars, which is the whole reason why we came to this planet in the first place. She doesn't have to go very far. Apparently, there are some caves only 30 kilometers from the colony where the conditions are right for Martian life. Just think, we might be living only 30 kilometers away from a Martian city. It makes sense, really. We live underground to stay safe from the sun, so I bet the Martians have to as well. I asked if I could go, and Mum said no. I asked if it was because I was grounded. I am still grounded, possibly for the next century. But Mum said that the reason I can't go, I couldn't, was because she was going. She's a specialist, you see. She will only be gone for a few hours, and she'll tell me all about it when she gets back. I asked if I could see the aliens once she'd brought one back to the colony. She smiled and said, "We'll see." Hmm. Sol 106, Mars year 57. Unbelievable, incredible, and so unfair. Today I went to school as usual. I'm still not allowed to go. I'm still allowed to go to school, expecting it to be normal a school day. Maths, normal English, normal babbling from Elijah about rocks or black holes on one side, and normal Letitia looking smug on the other. When we arrived, Mrs. K clapped her hands. Just goes that. Mrs. K clapped her hands and said something very not normal. I have an announcement. We're going on a field trip. I have an announcement, a special surprise today. We're going on a field trip. We're going outside. I couldn't believe it. Finally, I would get the chance to explore and be a real adventurer on a real adventure looking for real aliens. I was so excited that I could barely sit still. I kept hovering up and down in my chair, just waiting for Miss K to tell us to go and grab our bags. The classroom was filled with chatter. Clearly, I wasn't the only one who was excited for this adventure. Elijah was beaming and chattering about visiting Olympus Mons. I told him that wherever we were going, we'd better be on the lookout for aliens. Once everyone had finally settled down, Miss K told us that we would be going to look at the lichen fields that were being planted out in the valley. She told us that these were a valuable food source and would begin the process of changing Mars's atmosphere so that it had more oxygen and less carbon dioxide. Eventually, it could make Mars's atmosphere breathable for humans. Okay, so it wasn't Olympus Mons or alien hunting, but it wasn't bad either. Miss K told the class to line up by the door as we needed to get our Mars suits. Elijah and I pelted towards the door, but just as we got there, Miss K put her hands on our shoulders. "Not you two." All my happiness leaked through my toes. You didn't think that I'd be taking you with me after what happened in the greenhouse last week, did you? Elijah's face had gone rigid, but Miss K continued. I need to be able to trust every single pupil whom I take outside, and I'm afraid that, after your reckless behaviour, I simply cannot trust you both to behave. You will be doing odd jobs around the colony. Your first job is in the communications room. We watched the rest of the class bounce away, babbling happily. Before going round the corner and out of sight, Letitia gave us one last look, the smuggest look that she could muster. I felt like running after her and giving her a piece of my mind. It wouldn't have been worth it though. I knew deep down I'd only get into more trouble. I took a deep breath in and a long breath out and trudged in the opposite direction with Elijah. Maybe when we get to the communications room, I'll be allowed to write the end of my time-travelling wizard story, said Elijah. He was clearly trying to see the bright side, but to be honest, even he didn't sound very hopeful. Once in the communications room, we had to sort through a pile of old tech. Our job was to untangle the wires to see if any of them still worked. On the colony, nothing is thrown away because resources are so scarce that if anything can be reused, it will be. It was dull work. Seriously dull work. The only fun moment was when Elijah found some goggles that made him look like an alien scientist. A grown-up told us they were a really old invention, a VR headset or something. Do you remember on the Argo, I asked, chucking a pair of ancient headphones into a box of broken equipment when we didn't have to go to school and we played computer games all the time? And you always won at Galaxy Racers, and I always won at Alien Task Force, said Elijah, tapping every key on the keyboard to make sure that it all worked. Yeah. We both sighed. After that, we went to the laundry room. We had to sort through donations of clothes that people had grown out of or left behind. Some needed washing, some needed ironing, and some needed to be cut up and made into something else because it had too many holes. Do you remember one that when we were on the Argo, asked Elijah, ironing another beige t-shirt when we only had to change our clothes 3 times each month? And we never had to do any laundry, I added, throwing a bag of smelly clothes into a washing machine. We both sighed. The last job was the worst. Cockroach shelling. We were given a bowl filled with dead cockroaches that needed to have their heads, legs, and shells taken off before they go in tonight's curry. Cockroach curry is delicious, but pulling off their legs, heads, and shells is enough to put anyone off eating it ever again. Do you remember on the Argo when we used to have no hands eating competitions, I said, crunching a cockroach shell with my finger and thumbnails? And we ate burritos for every meal, Elijah said, throwing cockroach meat into the curry pot. We both sighed. After the cockroaches, we washed our hands for about 10 minutes to get all of the cockroachiness off and headed back to the classroom. It wasn't long before the rest of the class arrived, and they were more excited than when we left. We saw the lichen fields and the irrigation system for watering it. Soon there will be a whole farm, and they'll be able to grow other crops as well. Everyone settled down at their tables so that Miss Kay could give out any end-of-day notices. Letitia was the last to stop talking. I'm so glad we got to do that. It's really given me a taste for what it's like to be a real explorer on Mars. By the way, was anyone else given a souvenir by one of the scientists? From out of her pocket, she fetched a large lump of red Mars rock. By the way, was anyone else given a souvenir by one of the scientists? From out of her pocket, she fetched a large lump of red Mars rock inside a clear plastic case. Elijah looked like he was going to cry. Letitia turned to me. How was your day of drudgery? I hope you found it fun, she said, flicking her long hair over her shoulder. Doing odd jobs is the only way that you'll ever be useful on the Mars, or every way you're going to be useful on Mars. Imagine people like you being allowed out in the surface to explore. She laughed cruelly. At the time, I just wanted to make her shut up. But the more I think about it, the more determined I feel I have to do something. I'll show Letitia. We are going to be better Mars explorers than her. We are going to be the most famous explorers on the whole planet. And I know exactly how we are going to do it. And here are the pictures. Here are them untangling all the headphones and the wires and the cords. Here are them sorting through laundry. Here are them with all the dead cockroaches ready to shell them and to put them in the cockroach curry. And here at the end is Elijah very upset because Letitia's come back with a big Mars rock given to her by one of the scientists, and they are all very upset. And that is the end of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, get ready for that tomorrow. A top secret mission.